Billionaire exposed on a date with single mom. She discovered the amazing truth behind the setup. Sarah adjusted her cardigan, the soft fabric feeling like armor against the world, as she stepped into the cafe. The dim lights and buzz of chatter created a comforting illusion, but the reality pressed on her shoulders the weight of overdue bills, the need to feed her spirited son, Lucas, and the relentless fatigue from nursing shifts that left her emotionally drained. Tonight, she was meant to be having a break on a blind date her friends set up, but it felt more like a cruel joke. Jake was different from anyone she'd met, a charismatic man who seemed to slip effortlessly into the lively atmosphere while still standing out, his smile charming yet unsettling. As they sipped their coffees, laughter floated around them. But for Sarah, the churning inside mirrored the chaos of her life. What could a man like him possibly want with a single mom weighing the enormity of bills against her son's dreams? A swirl of desperation clawed at her heart. Was she here to seek companionship, or was it just a fleeting diversion? As their conversation meandered from childhood memories to dreams, she felt an unexpected connection, a flicker of warmth amidst the cold breezes of anxiety. Yet, the shadow of her own anguish loomed ever larger, a constant reminder of her priorities. She forced a smile, hiding the conflict within her, questions bubbling to the surface, battling against the thin veil of attraction. Could she ever let someone like Jake in, with his obvious privilege? But she also felt a flicker of hope, teasing the edges of her guarded heart. Before she could gather her thoughts, Jake's smile faded momentarily, revealing something deeper beneath the polished exterior. "You know, my family is looking to invest in local projects," he said, tone shifting. "I'd love to see what opportunities are out there." The word invest sent a jolt through Sarah. She felt the air grow heavier. This date now felt like a corporate meeting disguised as small talk. What did that mean for her, for Lucas? Would their growing connection merely fuel his business agenda? She hesitated, torn between her growing interest and the instinct to protect herself. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." The tension escalated as Jake leaned in, sincerity evident in his voice. "I don't want to just fulfill my father's expectations. I want what I'm doing to matter. To help." His words almost resonated, but with each syllable, the jagged edges of their realities collided. An affluent heir with a sense of purpose stood before her, an image battling against a tapestry woven with her struggles. Was he just saying what she wanted to hear, or was there a sliver of truth amidst the corporate sheen? Just then, the room felt stifling. There she sat, a dedicated nurse laboring her days away, clinging to dreams while worrying about Lucas' future. Could her heart dare to hope for something more? A sudden thought staggered her. Was it wise to let someone from a world so strange to her bridge the gap between them? Conversations grew slower, glances longer. The stakes were rising steeply beneath a false pretense, obfuscating genuine intentions. How fragile was this bond formed amid tangled truths? As they teetered on the brink of vulnerability and distrust, Sarah clenched her fists under the table, battling with her instincts, wishing her thoughts could settle like the coffee cooling between them. Each moment felt like a chasm deepening, waiting for the shock that would ultimately reveal the truth of their worlds, and she was not sure if it was a leap of faith or folly that awaited her. Sarah blinked, attempting to clear the encroaching fog that threatened to envelop her. The warmth emanating from Jake's smile flickered in and out like a dying candle. Hatred for vulnerability clawed at her chest, yet a whisper of courage urged her to engage further. What if this connection could lead somewhere important? With a forced breath, she tilted her head, grounded her thoughts, and dared to probe deeper. "How do you plan to help?" She found herself asking, her tone cool but curious, as she fought against the tides of self-doubt. Jake's brow furrowed, and she could see the wheels turning in his mind. I want to understand the community better, he replied slowly. Investing isn't just about money, it's about listening to the needs of ordinary people and creating pathways to opportunities. My family's legacy can mean more if we partner with those who truly live here. The sincerity in his words struck a chord within her. Perhaps behind the polished facade lay layers of depth she had been too quick to dismiss. Still, Sarah's heart whispered warnings. Fear crept in as she recalled nights spent fretting over bills due the next day versus Lucas' dreams of joining the basketball team or learning guitar. Ordinary people? She challenged, involuntarily leaning into the doubt. What do you know about ordinary? It's all well and good to speak of partnerships from a place of privilege, but experiences shape lives. The silence that followed was palpable, and in that moment, clarity floated to the surface. For the first time since she entered the cafe, Sarah sensed the need to stand her ground not just for herself, but for Lucas and all the sacrifices they had made. Jake looked taken aback, surprise etched across his handsome features. You're right. I can't presume to understand your experience, he admitted, his vulnerability a mere reflection of her own. But I want to learn. If all I do is write a check, nothing changes. An unfamiliar spark ignited inside her. It felt reckless, a much-needed dive into her aspirations and desires. In stark contrast to her nights spent in monotony, stuck between work shifts and maternal duties, the idea of melding their worlds tantalized her. Could she truly envision a partnership that was more than transactional? Her pragmatic side waged a war with her yearning for something greater than what she knew. As she tore her gaze from his, contemplating the embrace of a shared future, the unease of the evening found a partner: uncertainty. What if trusting him only led to the wreckage she feared? Yet, the fleeting hope whispered temptations. This was an opportunity to carve her own path. If his family could truly impact the community, her skills as a nurse could bridge emotional and physical gaps to develop programs that mattered, echoing her values. Jake's expression molded into intent focus, drawing her back from her introspections. But it starts with real conversations, doesn't it? He urged, shifting the tone to one of collaboration. We can analyze our values and find common ground to build on. You've seen what the community lacks, what young people need. What if we outlined a project together? A flicker of excitement surged through her, and then darkness loomed again. What if all this led to disappointment? Fighting back the doubts swelling within her, she focused intently, feeling the stage shift from fear to engaging strategically. We can meet next week, she proposed, surprising her own caution as words tumbled out, to brainstorm ideas. Sarah was astonished by her own tenacity. This could be the turning point, the moment that led to something new, a chance to shape futures. The thrill coursed through her veins, but alongside the rush came the pressure of potential failure. Their eyes locked, and she saw the wheels turning in his mind again, reflecting anticipation and something more profound. Their connection swelled, the gravity of their worlds clashing and intermingling with promise and peril. Yet, as she left the cafe, she knew each decision carried the weight of risk, including her and Lucas' future. A firm resolve settled in her chest as she acknowledged the depth still left to uncover of their bond and of herself. What awaited on this uncertain path? The next meeting transformed from mere conversations into forging an alliance that ignited both her ambition and protectiveness. But the pressing dilemma loomed: how would they navigate the inevitable shadows that capitalism cast over genuine connection? The week unfolded like a tightly wound coil, anticipation and anxiety intertwining around Sarah as she prepared her thoughts for the meeting with Jake. Each passing day ignited a cacophony of emotions within her: hope, skepticism, ambition, and a lingering fear of vulnerability. What if she walked into their rendezvous only to find the harsh reality of the world she'd grown up in reflected back at her, unyielding and cold? As the sun dipped below the horizon on the evening of their meeting, she settled at a small table in the cafe, her stomach fluttering with an unsettling mix of nerves and excitement. The indigo shadows cast by streetlights danced along the walls, their rhythmic movement mirroring the chaos whirling in her mind. Sarah took a deep breath, grounding herself, and reminded herself that this was more than just a casual conversation. It was an opportunity to reclaim part of her identity that felt buried under layers of mundane responsibility. When Jake walked in, confidence radiated from him. He spotted her immediately and made his way to the table with an eagerness in his step that pulled her in like gravity. She noted how he appeared every bit a young man of privilege yet carried a sincerity that was refreshing and needed. As he slid into the chair across from her, she mentally reviewed every strategy she could employ to keep the conversation anchored and purposeful. "Thank you for meeting with me," he said, his tone light yet earnest. "I want to make sure that we use this time wisely. What are the biggest needs you see right now?" The question hung in the air, and suddenly she felt an avalanche of complexities crash down. There were so many issues, from healthcare accessibility for families like hers to developing after-school programs that could keep kids engaged and safe. Each issue was interwoven with the weight of emotional investment: her life, Lucas's future, and the struggles of those around her. First and foremost, there's a significant lack of resources for mental health support, she started, surprised by how passionately the words spilled from her lips. Many families are barely managing daily struggles, let alone addressing the mental toll that comes with it. Programs dedicated to counseling and education could cut through some challenges before they escalate. Jake nodded, his brow furrowing in concentration, but Sarah could see a flicker of understanding. He was not just hearing her, he was digesting the reality behind her words. "I'd love to explore ideas around that," he said, leaning forward slightly. "How can we make it reach more people?" "That's a great question," she replied, embracing the collaboration rather than retreating behind self-doubt. This was the crux moment. "We could implement workshops that teach coping strategies and resilience-building techniques while also creating a safe space for conversations. It's about building trust within the community first." As the ideas flowed, she felt the tension within her dissipate. For the first time in years, her expertise as a nurse and a mother began to unfold as a strength rather than a burden. They delved into discussions of potential partnerships, innovative outreach plans, and even community events that could break down barriers. With every idea thrown into the air, her excitement deepened, and what had started as anxiety morphed into a shared vision. Still, lingering doubts skimmed the edges of her newfound passion. Would he be committed to this long-term? Could their partnership withstand the complexities of their different worlds? When their conversation wrapped up, and Jake's excitement was palpable, it felt as if the air around them buzzed with potential. But as they stood to leave, she hesitated, the weight of her earlier fears creeping back. "Jake," she said, her voice steady but revealing a hitch, "how do you plan to ensure this doesn't fall into the same traps of superficiality?" His response was instant. "It's about accountability, Sarah. I want you to lead alongside me. If we succeed, it'll be because of us both. This isn't a one-man show." Sarah's heart pounded at his words, the trust inherent in his invitation to her, yet another layer of vulnerability exposed. Navigating this could either solidify her path or unravel it completely. And just as she felt a flicker of hope, a shadow emerged in the back of her mind. What if this would unearth hidden tensions from his privileged background that might threaten their vision? Her thoughts spiraled as she stepped out into the night, leaving the cafe behind. She knew now there was more at stake than just planning. It wasn't just about shaping a project, it was about building a connection strong enough to withstand both their lives' complexities. As Sarah walked home, she realized the real work was yet to come. Connectivity lay beyond ideas, it resided in addressing fears head-on. But one question pulled at her: could she rely on Jake when vulnerability surfaced, when the harsh truths of his world met the gritty realities of hers? The next chapter of their alliance teetered on the edge of discovery, but deep inside, she knew one truth remained: the moment of truth lurked just around the corner. Days turned into a blur of strategizing, phone calls, and meetings. Each encounter with Jake felt charged with potential, but the heaviness of unspoken doubts continued to linger in the background. Every ambitious idea they crafted together was met with a heart-stopping realization: what did they really know about each other? One afternoon, Sarah found herself sipping coffee in her cramped kitchen, flicking through notes from their previous discussions. The sunlight cascaded through the window, casting a warm glow on the clutter, the scattered toys, the laundry waiting to be folded, the mounting reminders of her hectic life. But amidst the chaos, she felt a calming clarity emerge as she considered the path ahead. What had started as a tentative partnership with Jake now felt like a purposeful alliance, one that was shaping her identity beyond the confines of motherhood and the struggles she faced. Yet vulnerability gnawed at her. Her intuition told her that the transition from ideas to action would unveil truths she wasn't sure she was ready to confront. She needed to be proactive. Reaching for her phone, she shot Jake a message, proposing a planning session at a local park, where they could brainstorm ideas with an open mind and a touch of nature's tranquility. To her surprise, he responded almost immediately, suggesting a time that aligned perfectly with her schedule. On the day of their meeting, Sarah arrived early, taking in the fresh air. The park bustled with families, laughter, and the simple innocence of children playing. It was a sharp contrast to the weighty discussions she and Jake were about to embark upon. When Jake arrived, he was dressed in a casual green polo and jeans, a far cry from the tailored suits she usually associated with him. There was an ease about him today, and as they settled onto a bench, she felt a flicker of hope flicker within her once more. The lake shimmered in the sunlight, offering an unexpected backdrop for their strategic dialogue. "Let us dive into the specifics," Jake said, a hint of enthusiasm evident in his voice. "What do you think is the most critical first step?" As Sarah began detailing the importance of prioritizing mental health resources, she noticed the sincere interest in his eyes, but beneath it laid a shadow of responsibility. Their conversation flowed organically, ideas morphed and adapted like the gentle ripples in the water before them. Yet, every time a moment of levity arose, an undercurrent of tension seeped in. "Can you trust me, Sarah?" Jake asked suddenly, his gaze steady. The question caught her off guard. Trust. The word resonated through her mind, echoing the moments they spent collaborating. But trusting someone from a world so different from her own was fraught with questions that curled around her heart like ivy, tightening their grip with every thought. "What do you mean?" She finally replied, trying to keep her voice even, aware that her vulnerability was now at the forefront. "I know this is new for you. You're stepping into something that requires vulnerability, and I want to ensure you that I'm invested in this as much as you are." His earnestness struck a chord deep within her. Was she prepared to let him in? To unveil the raw truths of her life? She stumbled, wrestling with the words. "It's just that my past and my life has made it difficult for me to trust. I don't want this, whatever this is becoming." He finished for her, a glimmer of understanding flickering in his eyes. "Yes," she hesitated. "I don't want to get hurt again." Jake leaned closer, and suddenly the world around them seemed to fade. "Neither do I," he admitted quietly. "But we need to hold each other accountable if this is going to work." As his words settled between them, Sarah felt the weight of responsibility shift. It wasn't just her fears at play, it was the dynamic they were building, and every push for honesty felt like both a risk and an opportunity. "What if we included a community feedback mechanism?" she suggested, breaking the tension. "That way, we keep ourselves accountable to the very people we aim to help. It adds a layer of transparency that might ease our jitters." An approving smile lit up Jake's face. "I love that. It gives us a standard to uphold." Yet even as they exchanged excited ideas, an unsettling thought crept back in how would they tackle the inevitable hurdles their collaboration would face. The park's vibrancy surrounded them, yet anxiety lingered, fundamental questions playing out in her mind about how their contrasting backgrounds might complicate their journey ahead. As the sun began its descent, painting the sky with colors of uncertainty and possibility, she knew the true test was on the horizon. With the blueprint of their collaboration taking shape, the time had come to face the hidden truths of trust, accountability, and the weight of their different worlds. Would they successfully navigate the challenges that lay ahead, or would the cracks in their partnership reveal something irreparable? The following week, the park's vibrant atmosphere had lulled into a distant memory, replaced instead by the stark fluorescence of a conference room that felt sterile and devoid of inspiration. Sarah sat at the polished table, a laptop glowing in front of her, the faint hum of the air conditioning a steady reminder of the work ahead. It struck her how she was trading the soft whispers of nature for corporate rigidity, a consequence of their collaboration needing validation in the more conventional business world. Jake's presence didn't alleviate the tension hanging in the air, in fact, it amplified her uncertainty. He strode into the room, confidence radiating off him, briefcase in hand. Yet beneath that professionalism lay something raw, something eerily familiar. It was ambition. Ambition that sang the same haunting tune she had known all too well during her years in the workforce before motherhood drew her back. As they began outlining their project, Sarah felt the intensity of her internal conflict rise. She hadn't expected this would become a quarrel for acceptance, not just from Jake, but from the wider world they were gearing up to enter. Each slide she created for their presentation was a testament to her resolve. This was her chance to carve an identity effectively straddling the dual roles of mother and business partner. "We should consider highlighting the real impact of our initiative," Jake suggested, eyes brightening as he spoke. "Real testimonials can provide the emotional weight we need." Emotional weight. That's essential, she thought, but it also felt like a weight she wasn't sure she was prepared to carry. In her pursuit of a professional identity, would she have to expose pieces of herself that she wasn't ready to unveil? "Jake, have we considered how open we need to be?" she asked, her heart racing. "I mean, these personal stories. They're vulnerable. What if it backfires?" He leaned back, taking in her question with an unexpected steadiness. "Sarah, every innovation demands risk. If we want to instigate change, we have to be willing to share. Why should our initiative be different?" His response sent a ripple of doubt through her. She wasn't just grappling with her transformation into a businesswoman, she was also wrestling with the permission to reveal herself. The threshold over vulnerability felt like it was getting closer with every engagement. It compelled her to confront the parts of her past she'd buried deep, fearing scrutiny, yet yearning for acceptance. "I understand the need for authenticity, but the stakes are high," she replied carefully. "If we push this too far, it might risk both our reputations." She saw it then, the flicker of frustration crossed Jake's face, the moment their gazes locked. It was as if she had dashed water onto his fire. Reputation? Or the truth? What do we prioritize here? "You're worried about being exposed, but what about the people who might benefit?" His tone was steady yet firm, his challenge hanging in the air, electric and threatening. Her breath caught in her throat, and she could feel something shift within her. Was it anger or perhaps a burgeoning conviction? She needed to stand firm, yet at that moment, the enormity of his questions left her feeling disoriented. Caught in their intensity, Sarah realized it wasn't just her fear of showing vulnerability as a partner, it was also about reclaiming the aspects of herself that had felt lost. Trusting Jake, risking exposure, all of it was wound up in the essential question of who she wanted to be moving forward. "I need more time to think about this," Sarah murmured, shifting her focus back to the slides, unsure of how to articulate the whirlwind of emotions churning inside her. "Take all the time you need," Jake replied, an unimpressed neutrality coloring his voice. Yet, Sarah sensed he was watching her, waiting for her to rise to the occasion. As they moved from the conference space to a pair of lounge chairs tucked away in the corner, she felt an uninvited tension stretching between them. The weight of his expectations seemed to press down on her shoulders, an ironic twist considering he had once asked for her trust. In that moment, she recognized an undeniable truth: she was standing on the precipice of her own development, facing a crossroads that would either propel her into a new realm or keep her bound by chains of past apprehensions. "Tell me, Jake," Sarah began hesitantly, "how did you get to this point in your career? What led you to prioritize this social impact?" He regarded her thoughtfully, and as he began to respond, she hoped to find a path not just for their partnership, but for herself as well. What lay behind the mask he wore? Suddenly, the air thickened with anticipation, her pulse racing as she asked herself if understanding his journey might illuminate her own. Little did she know, what he was about to share would not only reshape her view of him but also challenge everything she thought she knew. Jake leaned forward, his eyes narrowing slightly as if weighing the moment carefully before he spoke. You know, I didn't always prioritize social impact. There was a time when profit was my sole motivator. His admission struck Sarah. It felt raw and unguarded, an opening she hadn't anticipated. What changed? She pressed, sensing the gravity behind his words. He hesitated, then continued. Working for a high-stakes company, I was thriving on financial success. Yet every year, I felt more void inside. I kept wondering, is this what I want my legacy to be? Sarah's curiosity piqued. This wasn't just about the corporate ladder but a personal reckoning. So you just pivoted one day? Not exactly. It was a slow realization. I started volunteering at local shelters and listening to people's stories. I realized how disconnected I was from the world outside my office, he confessed, his voice taking on a deeper resonance. There's a fulfillment that comes when you do something meaningful. It ignited a fire in me. As she listened, Sarah felt a flicker of admiration for him that was hard to ignore. Yet, a nagging thought gripped her, was she ready to ignite her own fire? That's inspiring but it sounds daunting, she replied, her doubts pooling in her gut. I mean, how do you even begin to balance ambition with authentic impact? Good question, he said, meeting her gaze intently. It's not necessarily about balance. It's about integrating both aspects. When you truly believe in what you're doing, ambition becomes a tool for impact rather than a competing force against it. His words reverberated in Sarah's mind, prompting a tumult of contemplation. Was Jake's approach the answer to her dilemma? She had always compartmentalized her roles, motherhood taking precedence, her career relegated to the periphery. The idea of integration hinted at a life transformed. But it's all so public, isn't it? She countered, her mind racing as she processed her fears. What if people judge me for my past choices? What if this exposes flaws I've worked hard to hide? He leaned back softly, giving her the space to explore her vulnerability while maintaining a focused intensity. That's a risk we all have to take. What you fear could actually be the bridge to what makes you relatable to others. Transparency can connect. Sarah felt her heart labor under the weight of his insight. Could she allow herself that kind of transparency? Could she risk shedding the protective layers she'd built? Do you think this project will open up that door for me? She asked, wrestling against her instinct to retreat. I certainly hope so, Jake responded, a challenge lingering in the air. But it's not just about this project. This is about you diving into your own potential. It's about answering those questions of your own identity. Who Sarah is outside of mother and business partner. There was a nervous flutter in her stomach. Identity. The very essence she had been wrestling with since stepping into this new role. Who was she? Could unveiling her fears invite not only acceptance but also empowerment? I guess. I have to confront my fears first, she finally admitted, acknowledgement dawning on her. And perhaps trust that I can take this plunge. A quiet moment hung between them, heavy with unspoken possibilities. Jake studied her, and she wondered what he was thinking. Did he see the potential she had yet to uncover? Let's take that plunge together, he said, offering a tentative yet encouraging smile. I'll navigate this with you. You won't be alone. Fighting back the swell of emotion, Sarah nodded slowly. It became clear that this partnership extended beyond business. It was about mutual discovery, a brave encounter with the self they both needed to explore. Just as newfound courage sparked within her, a thought flashed viscerally: could she really embrace authenticity in this corporate landscape, where mask-wearing was often the norm? But before she could respond, the door swung open, revealing their colleague Martin, a raucous intrusion into the sublime moment they created. "Hey, you two! Ready to brainstorm some killer strategies?" The mundane return to reality felt like a stark contrast, yet it also served to ground her. As they shifted gears back toward work, Sarah's spirit buzzed with restless anticipation and a hint of anxiety. The potential for a personal breakthrough stirred deeply. She realized she stood at the cusp of an expedition not just in business but in knowing herself. But would the undeniable commitment to truth come at a cost? And if so, could she bear the consequences? Her heart beat rapidly as new questions emerged. The journey ahead promised challenges intertwined with growth, unwavering resolve, and perhaps startling revelations about her own capacity for truth. As she prepared for the brainstorming session, her mind raced ahead. So many unknowns loomed, but one question lingered most vividly: would she emerge stronger, or would the intertwining of her identities threaten to unravel everything she sought to create? The boardroom buzzed with ideas, yet Sarah felt a storm brewing within, both ominous and exhilarating. How far was she willing to go to seize her own truth? The answer, she hoped, would soon unveil itself. The brainstorming session unfolded with a frenetic energy that initially overwhelmed Sarah. Ideas ricocheted off the conference room walls, yet her own contributions felt tenuous, skimming the surface of her deeper thoughts. She sat back in her chair, observing her colleagues, and a deep-seated question lingered: how could she integrate her newfound desire for authenticity into the hyper-competitive atmosphere around her? As Martin wrapped up the initial round of ideas, Sarah felt the pressure to push forward, to offer something substantive. It struck her that every suggestion from the team revolved around aggressive targets and impeccable growth metrics. The absence of heart or purpose gnawed at her, serving as a stark reminder of what she wanted to advocate for. "Can we pivot a little?" she interjected, her voice steadier than her pulse. "What if we frame our goals not just around the numbers but also toward enhancing community engagement through our initiatives?" A pause fell over the group, and their expressions shifted through a mix of surprise and skepticism. Jake's gaze zeroed in on her, a mixture of admiration and concern etched across his face. In that moment, despite the collective inertia, she saw a glimmer of potential. Here was a chance not just to make a point, but perhaps to anchor her own evolving identity within the fabric of her professional life. "Those are good metrics," Martin replied cautiously, "but what impact are we really measuring? Our stakeholders are more concerned with returns than altruism, Sarah." His words hit like a sharp jab, and her gut twisted in response. She had stepped outside her comfort zone, only to find herself confronted with traditional expectations. Did she genuinely believe she could carve a new path within this rigid framework, or was she courting professional self-sabotage? "Maybe we can redefine those returns," Sarah countered, bolstering her resolve. "If we demonstrate a greater societal impact, we might uncover new markets and opportunities, perhaps even build a better legacy ourselves." The silence became palpable as curiosity piqued and a few raised brows signaled an opening for deeper discussion. Sarah's heart raced, she felt emboldened yet terrified. Would they ridicule this vulnerability, or could it spark something transformative? Jake leaned forward, nodding appreciatively at her suggestion. "Maybe you're onto something, Sarah. Engaging our consumers emotionally can redefine their loyalty toward the brand." His support felt like a tether. Suddenly, she was part of a collective process and not just an outlier. It was the push she needed to fully articulate her vision. "Let us create a series of community outreach programs," she proposed, a fervor building inside. "Not only will we elevate our company's image, but we can forge real connections with our clients. They need to see that we care." The room sprang to life with voices considering her proposal. As excitement brewed among her colleagues, she felt a rising tide of confidence within herself. The fears that had gripped her began to subside as possibilities blossomed. Yet a critical thought lurked in the background: was this newfound direction merely the beginning of a long, arduous battle? Would her colleagues still respect her when the facade began to crumble, revealing imperfections and earlier choices she'd rather keep hidden? Martin voiced another counter, shaking off the enthusiasm. We all know change is hard. What if this flops? What if your vision disrupts our established processes without delivering the right results? His words struck her like a cold splash of water. Doubt returned with a vengeance, and Sarah contemplated the potential repercussions of her ambitions. Would she be able to weather the storm if it turned out her instincts were wrong? Before she could channel that worry, Jake interjected. But imagine if it works. Imagine redefining success not just for us, but for the communities we touch. Isn't that worth the risk? The path lay vividly ahead, a tenuous web of ambition interwoven with the thrill of exploration. As Sarah wrestled with her anxiety, she felt a pulse of determination spreading through her veins. This was no longer just about business, this was about forging her identity against the backdrop of a corporate world she had long felt detached from. The session drew to a close as contributors jotted notes and pondered the next steps. It felt electric, the air thick with possibility, yet Sarah was mindful of the old shadows looming: her past choices, her doubts, and the vulnerability that seeped in at moments of honest reflection. With her heart pounding, she challenged herself: could she cultivate the strength to take this ambitious plunge without compromising who she truly was? As her colleagues wrapped up their discussions, Sarah's thoughts raced ahead, contemplating the next crucial phase of her journey. The real challenge loomed just beyond the horizon: could she truly commit to her vision, or would fear tether her to complacency? The answer awaited her, tantalizing and daunting alike. She took a breath, sensing a storm of change brewing on the edge of her conviction. What would it take for her to leap fully into this uncharted territory? Would she emerge unscathed, or would the act of revealing her authentic self shatter the very foundations she hoped to build? The moment approached, and the clock was ticking toward a confrontation with the unknown. The days following the brainstorming session blurred together as excitement and apprehension intertwined in Sarah's mind. She replayed the meeting incessantly, the way her colleagues responded, the flicker of intrigue in Jake's eyes, it all fueled an embers of hope. Yet, Martin's stark warning echoed relentlessly, each repetition hardening the walls of doubt she had wrestled with her whole career. Determined to solidify her vision, Sarah steered her focus toward drafting a proposal for the community programs. Each word she typed felt heavy with significance, a delicate dance between authenticity and the harsh light of corporate scrutiny. She crafted every sentence as if it were her own identity at stake, knowing that if this failed, it could undermine her professional integrity and ambitions. Feedback was her next hurdle. She hesitated a moment before sharing it with her team, fearing rejection more than the results themselves. What if they found her ideas naive or impractical? Eventually, adrenaline propelled Sarah forward. She pinned her proposal on the office bulletin board, taking a step that felt monumental. Responses came pouring in, from intrigued nods to whispering skepticism. Martin's face remained expressionless, his scrutiny palpable, but Jake's enthusiasm cut through the tension. This is bold, Sarah. Let us discuss it in the next team meeting, he said, the reassurance sparking a flicker of bravery in her gut. In the days leading up to the meeting, Sarah prepared relentlessly, researching potential impacts and refining her pitch. She created visual aids, integrating data with personal narratives to illustrate the emotional power of their mission through the lens of past successful initiatives. It felt as though the stakes continued to rise, and she could not afford to falter now. Despite her meticulous planning, the morning of the meeting was riddled with anxiety. Each pulse of her heart resonated with thoughts of impending judgment from her colleagues. As she entered the conference room, she laid eyes on them all, faces clouded with expectation, and suddenly the walls felt as if they were closing in. Thanks for gathering, everyone, she began, her voice steady despite the butterflies churning in her stomach. Undeterred, she wiped the sweat from her palms and launched into her presentation, making a passionate case for viewing corporate success through a wider lens of community engagement. As she spoke, she could see the shift in the room. Slowly, skepticism gave way to contemplation. When she finished, an air of silence hung, pregnant with unspoken reflection. Then, Martin finally broke it, albeit with criticism. This is very different from our usual approach, and it risks disrupting our current strategies. Her heart sank momentarily, but Jake sprang to her defense. But don't you see? It's not about disruption alone, it's about evolution. This company needs to change if we want to be relevant going forward. The exchange ignited something in Sarah, the realization that she wasn't just presenting a proposal, she was championing a new identity for herself and potentially, for the company. Perhaps this was the dialogue she had hoped for, the raw friction that might test their capabilities and propel real change. Yet, amid the burgeoning energy of the debate came a sudden surge of panic. Could she pull this off? What if circumstantial failures fell disproportionately on her shoulders? The tightrope she walked felt even narrower now, and the weight of her vision bore down hard. As the questions danced around, Sarah summoned every ounce of her determination, reminding herself that growth stemmed from struggle. "I understand change can be unsettling," she asserted, "but might we begin to redefine what success truly means?" Their reactions were varied, intrigue mixed with aversion. She sensed that, deep down, her colleagues were wrestling with their own fears. Maybe they, too, recognized that this attempt at widening their perspective was also an opportunity to embrace a more fulfilling identity within their roles. And then, it happened. Martin offered a compromise. "Let us run a pilot program in a controlled environment to evaluate the feasibility without risking our current operations," he proposed. Relief washed over Sarah. It was not a full endorsement, but it was a foot in the door. After the meeting, she lingered behind, still absorbing the implications of their decisions. Jake approached her with a smile. "You led that discussion brilliantly," he commended. "You've earned their respect, no doubt." Her heart swelled, yet with it came a fresh wave of uncertainty. Respect was one thing, but would it translate into real change? Would this be the catalyst for her vision to take flight, or just another half-hearted attempt that would fade into shadows? As she gathered her things, a flicker of determination ignited once more. This was just the beginning, a tentative toe dip into a deeper exploration for herself and the company. How much further could she go? What would the next steps demand from her, and were the risks she faced worth the potential reward? A new layer of conflict unfurled, one that she hadn't fully anticipated. Would she maintain the courage to influence her colleagues when push came to shove, or would she retreat into complacency when faced with adversity? The answers loomed just ahead, tantalizing yet uncertain. Sarah felt the time approach to confront not just her ideas, but the very essence of who she had become within this environment. In the days following the meeting, the atmosphere in the office shifted subtly. There was a palpable mix of heightened expectation and undercurrents of skepticism, and Sarah felt it bearing down on her each day. The pilot program was meant to bridge the gap between innovation and tradition, but the looming uncertainty about its reception clawed at her confidence. She found herself oscillating between thrilling ambition and spiraling doubt. Each morning, she'd sit at her desk, fingers poised above the keyboard, but the words didn't flow as easily as before. She had repeatedly visualized the program's launch, yet imagination felt different from reality. How could she ensure it wouldn't collapse under the weight of expectations? She often replayed Martin's more piercing critiques in her head, the way they punctured her hopes, each jab reverberating with doubts. One afternoon, as Sarah took a break in the break room, she accidentally overheard a conversation between two colleagues. "I don't know if this pilot will even get off the ground honestly," one of them said. "We've always played it safe." Their skepticism hit Sarah like a plunging weight. She was reminded of how fragile her new identity felt and how easily it could fall apart under scrutiny. But amidst the swirling uncertainty, a flicker of resolve ignited inside her. The memory of Jake's praise anchored her. Perhaps she could turn this anxiety into motivation. Her proposal wasn't just a project, it represented a profound shift, one that required her to harness her deepest convictions and express them fearlessly. Today, she would seek clarity. That evening, she stayed late, crafting a more comprehensive roadmap for the pilot project. As her ideas unfolded on the page, a sense of conviction began to ground her again. With every point she articulated, the external noise faded into the background. Sarah envisioned how to present the pilot, embedding solid strategies within bold ideas. Maybe she could convert doubt into guiding principles instead of succumbing to it. Determined to pull her team's focus, she made a plan to gather everyone for a brainstorming session. This time, she de-emphasized collaboration over critique. They needed to see this as a collective mission, not just her vision to uphold. She sent out a meeting invite, lighting a renewed fire within herself. The fear of their rejection was overshadowed by the potential for genuine engagement. In preparation, she spent time analyzing potential objections and preemptively addressing them within her presentation. What if they still resisted? What if they failed to see the bigger picture? This self-interrogation forced Sarah to confront her own fears directly. As she practiced her speech in front of a mirror, she reminded herself of the depth of her unrealized potential. When the day arrived, Sarah walked into the conference room with her head held high. Similar faces were there, but this time, she radiated a quiet confidence. She laid out her vision, her strategies interlaced with data, inviting her colleagues to envision the future with her. And this time, the resonance in the room felt different. Heads nodded, and tentative smiles crossed faces. Then Martin spoke again, but instead of dismissing her, he asked a genuine question. How will this affect our current clientele? The inquiry didn't feel like a jab but an invitation to delve deeper. Sarah seized the opportunity, weaving an answer that not only addressed his concerns but also spoke to the potential benefits for all involved. Each interaction in that meeting reinforced a monumental belief within her she had the ability to bring about change. She guided the conversation, leveraging their insights until the atmosphere shifted from confrontation to collaboration. When the meeting wrapped, Sarah felt invigorated, emboldened by the unity they had fostered. As her colleagues left, Jake lingered. "You nailed it, Sarah. You brought them around," he praised. But even as she reveled in success, a gnawing thought lingered. It was still early, and the hardest parts lay ahead. Would they truly back her through the next phases, or was this merely a fleeting moment of support? As the evening dimmed, Sarah looked out at the city skyline from her office window, envisioning the road ahead. The possibilities felt endless, each one tinged with both promise and peril. The next steps demanded from her an unwavering resolve. She needed to prepare for the real tests. And a realization settled among the excitement: what if she had inspired them not just to support her vision but to co-create it? But as she considered this profound shift, a disturbing thought arose: who among them might still resist the change? This was more than just ideas on a page, it was a battle for her integrity against the tides of complacency waiting to pull her back. With resolve coursing through her, Sarah knew she needed to gear up for the confrontation that was likely on the horizon. How would she rally others to embrace the discomfort that came with growth, and which voices of dissent would she have to silence to hold her ground? The answers felt as urgent as a ticking clock, and she was ready to find out. Days morphed into weeks, and as the pilot program kicked off, Sarah found herself at the nexus of uncertainty and exhilarating potential. Their first community workshop unfolded at a local community center, where the atmosphere buzzed with eager faces, many of whom she had encountered in her nursing career. They had come seeking connection, support, and strategies for resilience amidst the trials of their lives. Sarah stood in front of the group, heart racing, the weight of expectations pressing down. The partnership with Jake seemed abstract until this moment. Now, it felt very real. How did she encapsulate her vision into a transformative experience for these families? Her nerves danced, but as she saw familiar faces among the audience, she felt a flicker of fortitude surge. This was why they had fought for this initiative. She took a deep breath, grounding herself. With every word that flowed, she felt the enormity of her purpose, the aim to foster an environment where vulnerability was not only accepted but celebrated. Their discussions about mental health and resilience became a nexus of shared stories, insights, and revelations. At one point, a mother shared her struggle with anxiety, and Sarah felt her pulse quicken. Here, in this moment of communion, she realized the essence of her initiative. It transcended mere metrics and business goals, it was about humanity. A participation crescendoed as the group engaged with one another, their voices coming alive in a chorus of hope. Later that week, Sarah followed up on the workshop's feedback. The community's involvement felt authentic, but that sharp, familiar feeling of doubt returned as she analyzed the success metrics. Would her colleagues celebrate this connection, or would they focus solely on the bottom line? When she convened with Jake and the team afterward, torn between excitement and anxiety, she shared the powerful stories from the participants, urging her colleagues to see beyond profits. Real change begins in the narratives we cultivate, she articulated, her conviction palpable. If we fail to honor the stories behind the statistics, we risk losing our deepest purpose. Jake leaned in, visibly moved, echoing her sentiments. The room thickened with tension. Would her words resonate beyond this meeting? Gradually, she could sense shifts among her co-workers, expressions softening, contemplations unspooling. Yet, the peace was short-lived. Martin raised a caution flag about their strategy, questioning the tangible ROI on emotional outreach. A somber silence fell around the table, Sarah's heart thumping in her ears. Beneath the critiques lay a fear. She recognized guardianship over the status quo. Then Jake surprised her. Maybe we haven't fully understood the engagement metrics, he suggested thoughtfully. Perhaps we can redefine success. Maybe the impact can't just be quantified in numbers but reflected in qualitative changes. Vulnerability clenched within Sarah as she felt a mixture of hope and trepidation. Could they truly divert their lens toward authenticity amidst corporate pressures? The sustainability of their vision dangled on a precipice. Days turned into meetings increasingly filled with deliberation over their metrics framework. While many rallied behind Sarah's approach, she felt a hidden battle simmering beneath the surface, a dichotomy of values cleaving the team. It came to a head during a crucial quarterly review. The conference room buzzed with anticipation, each member poised to assess their progress. As the figures unfolded on the screen, Sarah felt the ground beneath her tremble. Would the community narratives hold up against the data-driven scrutiny? The slides glittered with numbers, but as edited clips from the workshops played, she felt an overwhelming rush. The tangible impact of their initiative pierced through corporate detachment. The swirling debate ensued, with emotions heated, but in a defining moment, Sarah stood firm. I understand the importance of metrics, but look closely, she urged, her voice breaking free from self-doubt. Those numbers reflect lives being changed, kids recruited into mentoring programs, families accessing mental health resources, and communities re-engaging with support channels. It's beyond profit, it's about trust, purpose, and partnership. As tension spiraled, something shifted in the room. She could see Jake's affirmation reflected in the eyes of some colleagues, the realization settling in. This was not merely a business transformation, it was a fundamental shift towards understanding the very essence of impact. When Martin spoke again, he softened, proposing a blend of their traditional metrics alongside Sarah's new vision. The compromise ignited a wave of collaborative energy. Even in the face of resistance, they constructed a path that felt rooted in authenticity. After the meeting was adjourned, Sarah found herself separated away with Jake, the weight of the discussion swirling between them. You were incredible, he said, a genuine respect emanating from him. But beneath the accolades loomed her anxieties. Could this execution withstand scrutiny in the coming months? Through every step, each workshop, and every convergence of their different ideals, Sarah had emerged as a bridge between two worlds, hers and Jake's. It was evolution unfolding, each tiny victory reinforcing her strength while simultaneously challenging her consistency to remain grounded. With newfound confidence, she reflected on the journey thus far. There would be setbacks ahead, moments she felt pulled apart by past fears and lingering doubts. But this time, she recognized the tangible growth within herself. She had become a catalyst for change, one carefully balanced between ambition and authenticity. As she stepped out of the conference room, breaths long awaited outside seemed fresher than before. The clouds overhead had thinned, conceding a peak of sunlight. While her anxieties would remain, this time they were tethered to a reality she was reshaping not just for herself but for her community. A sense of fulfillment saturated her being. She was positioned away from doubt, directly intertwined with her purpose. It was not only what she had accomplished but also how she had evolved into an advocate for genuine connections and collaboration. With every stride she took, Sarah reaffirmed her resolve. She had conquered uncertainty and embraced vulnerability. The road ahead was still flanked by shadows, but there was a light guiding her home, one steadfast with courage. And so the chapter of change continued, each day revealing fresh narratives, as her alliance with Jake deepened, both personally and professionally. They were partners on a shared journey towards meaningful impact, ready to face whatever came next, together. You need to subscribe now to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. This is your opportunity to join the community that champions personal growth. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, it truly makes a difference. Comment below with your reactions and theories about the journey. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. They're here for a reason, and it's time for them to join the narrative of triumph and transformation.